Hi, my name's Phil Calvert, and thanks for joining us again for Season 2 of Advisor Lives, the podcast for ambitious financial advisors. In Series 2, we're concentrating much more on business development and marketing. And one of the reasons for that is, I've been running online forums for financial advisors since 2004. And, every single day there are conversations in our forum, particularly in our Facebook group, around literally anything that a financial advisor can ask about how to run a successful financial advice business. But since 2004, there's been one topic that comes up time and time again, more than anything else, and that is, of course, lead generation. And typically what I'll see in the forum is a financial advisor will ask a question that's like, how are people generating leads right now? How are you finding this firm? How are you finding that firm? Are you using unbiased? Are you using vouched for? Are you doing seminars? Are you doing Facebook advertising? So this particular topic comes up time and time again. And whilst most financial advisors seem to attract most of their new inquiries from referrals and introductions, which is great. After all, you do a great job for a client, and you would hope and to some extent expect that someone will make an introduction to you. My personal opinion is, and we're going to explore this more over Series 2, is that we're only scratching the surface when it comes to referrals and introductions in the financial planning space. Because I think lead generation has changed. And when you look at typically, if we go back to the past, in the 70s or the 80s, we were at a dinner party and someone around the table might say, oh, can anyone recommend a financial advisor? Can anyone help my daughter get their first mortgage or something like that? And someone around the table will say, yeah, check out my financial advisor. They're great. Check out Jones & Co. And we'd be delighted because someone around the table has made a personal recommendation to us. We write Jones & Co. down on the napkin, and the next day we phone them up. And it doesn't quite happen like that these days. Today, consumers are much more switched on. Even if we are at that dinner party and someone says, yeah, check out Jones & Co. Today, we'll write Jones & Co. and we'll ask for their website address down on the napkin. And the next day, we don't phone them up. What we tend to do is to go online. We want to check them out. We want to do a bit of due diligence. We want to see who else is in the area. And it is not necessarily a given that Jones & Co. are going to get our business. So I happen to think that the traditional way of attracting leads through referrals and introductions is creaking a bit. That's not to say they're finished, not by a long way. There's much more we can do to attract more and better quality introductions. But there are, of course, other ways to attract leads. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge believer in live events, putting on seminars, putting on workshops. In fact, in my 43-year career working with financial advisors, time and time again, I've seen all around the world, particularly in the UK, that the most successful financial advisors have used live events in some way, shape or form as part of their lead generation. It just works. And, I can convince any financial advisor that they should be putting on seminars and workshops. But there's always that little thing at the back of their mind where they're thinking, but what if people don't turn up? What if I pay for the hotel and people don't turn up and the lunch is there and it's going to go cold? That's just a process. Follow the process. You'll get a room full of people. And frankly, you should be seeing conversion rates in excess of 80%. And by conversion, I mean people who turn up, turning into people who want to become a client. So seminars and live events just work. However, in recent years, we've seen the rise of lead generation firms. And it's a bit of a mystery area for a lot of financial advisors. So I wanted to try and pull the cloak away from some of this today and talk to an expert on lead generation. And that is leads that you purchase through an independent lead generation firm. And I'm really delighted to say today that my guest is Sam Perry. Sam is director of A Point Marketing. And he is basically an expert on this. He's an expert on sales. He's worked for Savills, I think it is, and also you've helped businesses to get into China as well. So warm welcome to you, Sam. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So just for the benefit of our listeners and our viewers, just give me a bit of background about yourself, where you've come from, and how you've come to be doing what you are today.
Thanks very much indeed, Phil. Yeah, well, it's been a sort of a haphazard journey to get to the point where I'm at right now. I didn't intend to get into financial services marketing, to be brutally honest about it. I was, as you said, working with Savills International, selling property overseas in the good old days, in the heyday when credit was free and easy,
Yes.
and everyone had, people were buying properties on credit cards over the phone. And I had a business with about 20 people working there, doing nothing but selling overseas property investments in Cyprus, Dubai, Turkey, with the Savills brand. And it was going great guns. And it was amazing how I was surprised at how willing people were to take a punt on an overseas investment in a place they'd never been to before, probably had no intention of ever going to, because it was just an investment, And that was a great business and a great time. We didn't realize how good a time it was until 2008, when, I don't know if anybody's old enough, I'm sure some of us will be old enough to remember.
There'll be some.
Okay. And of course, so that the party stopped and the tap was turned off, and then almost literally overnight, that industry, property and overseas kind of died a death. Yep. And so I was forced to look at, well, where do I go next? I did, cling to a few other life rafts like Dubai and other places overseas to carry on with property, but that just wasn't sustainable either. So I decided to get into financial services and looked at mortgages in the UK. And I thought, okay, wouldn't it be great if I could train up a team, get into mortgages, and transfer these skills that we've used in property and bring them to bear into the financial services market? Well, for various reasons, I realized it wasn't quite as straightforward as that. And probably my skill set wasn't necessarily attuned to the advice giving side and the compliance and that part of things. But what I did quickly realize, being involved with a mortgage company, in the training process, was that there was a glaring need all around me for leads and for new business opportunities. And the new mortgage advisors that were being brought on in their droves for this company that I was working with were struggling. And it was a great shame, because they'd gone through the training process and put in all the time and effort, and they were hitting this brick wall with leads. How do you get leads? And I found myself, with my own transferable skills, able to generate those leads very quickly on the telephone. And, not wanting to sound big-headed about it, but it was obviously something I was good at. And I thought, hold on a minute, this could be something worth looking into. And these mortgage advisors started to pay me to generate their leads. And then very quickly, within a very short space of time, I had 3 or 4 people working with me, and we were generating leads for mortgage advisors. And what we were doing essentially was buying the leads in from lead generation companies around the country, and converting them into more qualified, proceedable prospects. We were practically doing the fact find on the phone for them, and then packaging that to the newbie mortgage advisor. Of course, he was very happy and she was happy, because it was a teed up opportunity. Yeah. And so then it just snowballed, really. Then we got into pensions, equity release, and life insurance, and here we are today, 8 years on. Now, we're not lead generators as such. I need to make the distinction. We did dabble with the actual, the dark arts of getting onto the internet, trying to generate leads. But we quickly realized again that, there are horses for courses. Play to your strengths. There are people out there who've already done this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They're well ahead. Why reinvent the wheel? Do what you're good at. And what we are good at, we discovered, is identifying the sources of leads that work. We have a big, wide view of pretty much most of the lead generating companies in the UK with regards to financial services. Yeah. So we know which are the performers, which are not performing so well at any given time. And we can see on our data, where people should really, or where we should focus, or where our clients should focus their money in buying leads. So that's a great help to a lot of our clients, because it saves them literally thousands of pounds and months, if not years, of wasted energy, time and money trying to find a good lead source. You don't have to go through that learning curve with us. We've already done it.
That's really interesting, because from my kind of helicopter view of our community of financial advisors, they tend to fall into 2 camps. There are the financial advisors who love lead generation firms, and there are others that have never had a good experience of it. And I see this time and time again, and there are certain names that come up time and time again. And I just wonder, what is it that the financial advisors who don't kind of see a good experience from lead gen firms. Are there sort of overinflated expectations that they've got there? What's going on there that some people just love lead gen firms and others they just don't get it at all?
That's a really good point, and I think that's the nub of the issue for many of the people we speak to. Most of the people who we get to talk to about this are, you know, a little bit wary. They've had a negative experience or a mediocre one at best. Probably what they've done is they've gone directly to a lead generation company, bought a batch of leads, because they're, you know, one-man bands or two-man bands or whatever. They're very busy out on the road, up and down the M25 or whatever, giving advice. Maybe in the old days, now they're on Zoom, whatever. But you know, they're busy, and so when the lead drops into their inbox, and they're not cheap, these leads. I mean, you could be paying up to £200 or more for these leads. So when that drops into the inbox, where are they? They may be just coming out of a meeting or just about to go into one, or they're just on the road. So they think, okay, I'll attack that in a minute. And then when they eventually get round to it, it's 3 or 4 or 6 hours later. Nobody picks up, just because, you know, sometimes they do, they don't. So then it gets left another day, and then whatever, it just dies a slow death. Often that's what happens with those leads, or they do get through and they're just not in the right mindset to have that conversation, because you know, it's a different hat to wear when you're, because let's be honest, it is a selling situation in a way, because you're talking to a total stranger who's not expecting your call, and you know, there's a nanosecond of opportunity to create the right rapport, relevance, and grab their attention. And if you're not into that, and it's not your skill set, or you're just focused on something else, chances are you're going to lose that lead, because most people's default position when they receive a call they're not expecting is to just bundle you off the phone politely, you know, just to say no. It's always, even if they are interested and there is a level of intent there that could be found, they're generally thinking, I don't really want to speak to you, I don't know you, you know, and then that opportunity's gone. And that often happens. And I think the other thing is important to point out here is that a lot of the misconceptions around a lead are that, you know, that somebody goes online and then they are frantically pacing up and down the room waiting for that call. And then the advisor thinks that that's what they're going to get, is somebody who says, oh, thank God you've called, you know, I've been waiting for but you know, but that doesn't happen. And so when they get a lukewarm response, which is, well, you know, yeah, I was kind of interested, a lot of people just say, oh, well, so you're not really interested, are you? No, that's right, I'm not. And then they just end the call, and that's it, end of opportunity. Well, anyway, what we do is we come in and we take that burden off the financial advisor. We say, don't worry, wherever you are giving advice, busy in a meeting, whatever it is, we'll take care of the leads. We'll phone those people up. We phone them up 6 times a day for the first 48 hours, and then 3 times a day. We work every lead for 10 days minimum. So we maximize contact rates. We speak to 90% of people, but when we also get through to them, we're much more in tune with what needs to be said, because that's what we do all day long. We're in the zone. We've got the right hat on, and you know, the statistics speak for themselves. Our conversion rates are about 45 to 50% from lead to appointment, whereas the average advisor is only doing about 10 to 15% on a good day. So there's a massive difference in return potential there. And that's, I think, essentially it in a nutshell. That's what's happening. The leads, there's a misconception about what they are, and there's also a negative memory from previous experiences based on them not just being worked appropriately.
So if I'm a financial advisor, and I've got a business where I'm attracting referrals from existing clients, maybe some professional connections, and I'm thinking I would just like to keep my supply just topped up a bit. I was told years ago by somebody at Unbiased, I think it was years ago, that advisors really ought to look at lead gen services as a kind of top up to what you do already.
Right.
You know, most financial advice firms really should have a marketing strategy. Most don't, but they should have a marketing strategy. So they should have really thought about, you know, I'm looking for this type of client, and therefore the sort of activities that I should be doing to attract them should be this, and perhaps this, and my metrics will be X, Y, Z. And so I was told that really you should look at lead gen services as a top up to what you're already doing. Now, but let's say here we are, we're getting into 2022, and we're thinking, okay, this year I would like to work with lead gen firms. What sort of expectations should I set on myself, and how should I conduct myself from here, other than calling your good selves, of course? But what sort of mindset do I need to get into as a financial advisor as to what to expect from working with a firm like yourself?
Well, I mean, you're right that it should be one tool in your armory of marketing plans, and I mean, for some businesses, for us it's their main source of new business, their main source, and it's their oxygen. If the leads drop off, they really suffer, and particularly some of the larger firms we deal with, where they're recruiting 10, 20, 30, 60 people a year, they need those leads to feed the mouths that are coming in. So for them, it's crucial that they get a good supply and good quality. But if you're in a different situation, a happy situation where many people are, where they've already got an established business, referral business is coming in, and you want to, like you said, top up, or just essentially grow the business or sustain it at a certain level. Maybe you're going to take one person on, possibly. Maybe you've got a gap in your diary for 2 or 3 extra bits of business a week or a month, maybe. Then this could be really for you. It's a low level of investment, and I would say avoid, if you can, getting into onerous contracts too early on with companies you haven't tried, because we're a firm believer at A Point that if it's good enough, then you'll stick around and keep coming back for more. We don't need to straitjacket you into a contract just because you're going to try and wriggle out after 2 months. I mean, if that's the case, there's something wrong with our model. That's our view anyway.
Sure, yeah.
So, but if companies do try and trap you in or lock you in, maybe negotiate out of that. Maybe check very carefully their replacement policies as well, because some have better replacement policies than others.
I've seen that being discussed. Yeah.
It's an important thing. Some will say, well, our price already factors in the fact that there's going to be some there that you can't work with, so we charge less accordingly. Fair enough. Others say, no, we will give a good quality, high price, but you will get lots of opportunities to make sure that the opportunities are at least will wash their face if you take them further. And there are other companies that will offer you an appointment on a plate. So you pay a high amount of money for a certain proposition. It looks like a great opportunity. The risk there, of course, is that there's no guarantee. You might pay £700 for literally for an appointment that looks like it's a real juicy prospect, but you still haven't met that person yet, and you haven't got a rapport with them, so it could go either way. It really is 50-50. And I'd say also the downside to that way of working is you're not going to get all the leads that led up to that. So I'd say check the replacement policies, try not to get locked into an onerous contract if you can. Test the waters with a small sample, but a big enough sample so that you can get a reasonable picture of it. I mean, if you just say, I'll take 5 leads, you're not really going to get a proper snapshot, probably not much with 10, but if you could go for 20 or 30, at least you could say at the end of that, this is working or not. And the final thing I'd say is bear in mind that, and this refers to something I read, I'll tell you about in the book that I'm going to recommend at the end, but there is obviously, this tendency to want to make snap decisions, look at the leads. Okay, it's been 6 weeks, what's the return? The thing is, there are some slow burns in there, in the leads and in the appointments and the business meetings you have. Maybe looking at it 6 months or 12 months down the line is more realistic.
Okay.
And you'll get a better idea of what the true return was potentially.
That's interesting. Yes, I suppose I could imagine that some advisors would literally judge the book by its cover. But first batch of leads that come in, none of them converted, therefore not going to talk to them anymore. That's interesting. And to what extent are advisors clear on the sort of leads they actually want? And I'm thinking more in the sort of investment pension space, perhaps, than maybe mortgages and protection. But in the work that I do with advisors, one of the questions I quite often ask is, you know, if your dream client could walk in through the door right now, can you describe them to me? And the vast majority can't. I get a kind of vague area. Well, they need to have more than a certain amount under management, and that's not focused enough. That's not a dream client.
Yes.
And I just wanted to, from your perspective, to what extent are they actually clear about the sort of leads and clients that they want to take on?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is definitely a blurry sort of picture there. Some, I mean, they have a diverse set of requirements. We've got one chap who's running a very large show out of Canary Wharf, and he has a very clear idea of what he wants. It's simply two things. One, do they earn over £75,000? And two, do they want to talk to me?
Okay.
And that's it. And that's all he wants.
That's interesting, yeah.
He's doing pensions and investments, and he takes on a large number of people, new people, new recruits, and that's his criteria. Others are much more prescriptive and will say, we want a minimum pot size of 250,000, and we don't want any DB final salary pensions,
yeah,
or whatever. Likewise with mortgages. Some people say, I don't want to touch anything to do with buy-to-lets. I don't want anything to do with first-time buyers. I just want straightforward remortgages over 150k,
yeah,
so that, you know, I can slam dunk them, you know, and that kind of thing. Others will say, no, I like buy-to-lets, and sorry, I like first-time buyers because they're on a journey. There's lots of opportunity to cross-sell other products, and there's a good chance that I can, you know, stay with them over a period of time and probably do 3 or 4 or 5 transactions with them.
Right.
I suppose a lot of it depends on the age of the advisor and where they see themselves and where their business is at the time. Obviously, the less restrictive the criteria seems to be coming from the lower experienced side of things. The more experience they get, the more picky they are.
Yeah. I'm starting to see a few more advisors than I've seen in the past really beginning to think about niche markets or much more focused markets. I've had several conversations in the last 3 months from financial advisors. Maybe we're doing some work for them, putting a scorecard together for them or something like that. And they've come back to me and said, Phil, we've got quite a lot of dentists on our books, or we've got access to a lot of dentists, or we've got access to a lot of lawyers. Yeah. Could we do something for them as well? And those conversations are happening much more regularly now. And I'm just wondering, do you, and in fact, could you cope with, if you had an advisor who said, you know, we're looking for accountants or we're looking for surgeons and people like that, is that something that you can help with?
Very much so, and we are very actively looking at alternatives to the standard, you know, purchase a Google AdWord lead approach. I mean, because, you know, there's a place for that, and it can be a quick win in some respects. But even with that approach, there's a good proportion of those leads generated which are not convertible straight away, but they are worth nurturing over a period of time. Yeah. And what we're trying to focus much more on now is nurturing those leads that don't go straight away into some form of opportunity. Right. And what you just mentioned there is a great idea as well, of specializing, focusing the message, targeting a certain group of people is a great idea. One lady we're working with in the West Midlands has got her focus. She says she wants to focus her business on women, and she's decided that with us we're doing a campaign which will focus on divorced or divorcing women, because obviously they're generally in their mid-40s. There's a lot of important information that needs to be, you know, given to these people to do with pensions and what their, you know, the rights are and all the rest of it. And there's a high level of intent and engagement in that process. So if you can find people who are going through an important life situation and they need the advice, and you can get them in large numbers, unfortunately 50% of marriages maybe don't, you know, last the course. So it's you know, it's a ready-made opportunity to help people and get a level of engagement that you wouldn't in other situations. So these places are, these kinds of approaches are good. Got a chap in Northern Ireland, he's decided to focus primarily on the educational establishments of that country. And, you know, he's got contacts with every headmaster in 100 schools, and he's already got 500 referrals from there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Great.
Love it. I love a niche. Now, it's interesting you mentioned, kind of Google AdWords there. Like, it'd be interesting to explore this a bit. I think there is a perception that amongst many advisors that that's what you guys do, is you spend a fortune on Google ads and goodness knows what else, and then everything that comes in gets sold on to a financial advisor. And it's from talking to you, there's much more to it than just that. And you mentioned the nurturing word, which I think is something that a lot of advisors don't really realize is something that's available. Just tell me a little bit more about how you do that, and where it goes for exactly what you do to get to a point where an advisor is going to be biting your hand off.
Well, I mean, we can either generate leads from a set of data that we could buy in. Let's say, for example, we've got a client who said, I would like to target the senior shareholders and managing directors of companies with a turnover of over £3 million in the London and South East area.
Right.
Fine. That's quite a niche target. We could then buy the data for that legitimately. It's all GDPR compliant, and we would structure a marketing message that would involve email marketing, LinkedIn, social media, and all sorts of other approaches to these people, and of course telephone calls being the ultimate thing that would tip people over the edge and bring them on board. We would be offering whatever we think is appropriate. We could offer breakfast meetings if that's what they want, or seminars or webinars, or niche things that are core to the industry. So if we're targeting a particular industry, whatever it might be, an export industry or whatever, we could try and pick up on themes that are relevant to them and put that into our marketing. And so, yes, we would, rather than being, phone them up, are you interested? Yes, no, you're not. We would drip feed messages so that we slowly seep into their consciousness. Yes, and then by the time we actually do get to pick up the phone and talk to them, there might be some awareness of us. They may have even come to us by then. And there'll be a better chance of getting some kind of conversion out of them.
So it's not just as simple as someone responds to an advert online, or someone fills in a form online, and one way or another someday ends up on an IFA's desk, something like that. There's clearly more going on. I'm assuming also, I mean, you're thinking in terms of the value that you provide to the advisor, because you don't want to fall into that box of the 50-50 box, I love you or I hate you. You're presumably doing everything you can to get to the point where the advisor's got almost no work to do other than turn up for the interview that you've arranged.
That is exactly what we're trying to do. And if you look at the testimonials that we get unsolicited from lots of advisors, it's quite telling, and there's a pattern. And it's really them saying, thank the Lord that you came along and took this burden from my shoulders, which is the lead generation, whole of ambiguity and wasted money, and you've taken that away from me. I don't have to worry about picking up the phone now, and I literally look in my diary and there is the appointment, and in my inbox is a detailed fact find which you've taken on that call.
Wow.
Giving me chapter and verse on everything that person wants. All the soft facts, the hard facts, everything I could possibly want. I couldn't do a better job myself. And great, I go in there, I get a warm reception from that person. They know who I am, they know why I'm coming, and they're all ears and eyes listening, and there's no better proposition. Then the ball is fairly in my court, and away I go. And this is what we hear time and again. It's the saving of time and hassle and money, and getting the better return on investment, because obviously if we're converting 45 to 50% of the leads as opposed to his 10 or 15, you can see there's a clear return.
This is kind of holy grail stuff. We did a poll in our Facebook group where I asked the question, when you look at all sources of new leads coming into your financial advice business, to what extent do you as an advisor have to get more information before you can decide whether or not it's a client you can work with? And it came back something like 95, 98% said, yeah, we've almost always got to get more information. So what you're saying is you get that information as well as the lead.
We get all of that information, and also we are filtering out what they don't want as well. So if the advisor says, listen, I really don't want X or Y, or someone who's like this or has this, fine, we'll filter that out. So they never even have the conversation with the lead. They don't have to spend 20 minutes on the call, or maybe even longer, or even go to someone's house and then discover actually really in hindsight that was a wasted trip. They didn't really need to drive an hour there, sit there for an hour and drive an hour back. We've done that for them. And we're very, very, very good at the bespoke approaches. So unlike larger companies, and this is why we keep this company as small, is because we can offer that flexibility and nimble service. Yeah. We're bespoke. So we talk to every single advisor who employs our services and say, what is it that you actually want? And then we go and tailor our service for that person individually. So we don't just say, well, this is the way we work, take it or leave it. No, we tailor everything individually for the client.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So just kind of thinking, where do you see the future of your role working with advisors, and how do you see lead gen changing over time? Maybe the metaverse will have something to do with it.
Yeah, maybe. Well, definitely what we're trying to do is to capitalize and expand on what we're clearly good at, which is relieving the advisor of the mundane day-to-day things like filling the pipeline. They're not good at that. What they're good at is giving advice. Yeah, it's horses for courses. Everyone should play to their strengths. If you're a good financial advisor, what you should be doing is giving financial advice. You shouldn't be picking up the phone and chasing after leads and then leaving messages and emails. That should be someone else who's good at that. And that's what we do. Yeah. But also the post-appointment phase is something that's neglected. Right. For example, advisors are busy now before the lead is generated and the appointment's sat. Well, afterwards, they're not going to be any less busy. They're going to be more busy. So who is nurturing that appointment, that lead post-appointment? Who is it? Who's going to do that? What about the annual review? What about keeping in touch with them over the next 12 months to see if there are other cross-selling opportunities? Yeah. And maybe just keeping a presence, keeping the advisor and his service in their mind, so that they when the call does come, they go, yeah, I remember, yeah, and it's just warmer and it's better. Yeah. And if there are any problems that are cropping up, get to them quickly before they get out of control, before people get upset and decide to go somewhere else. Nip them in the bud.
That's really interesting, because a common criticism I hear from financial advisors when working with lead generation firms is there isn't really a relationship. Yeah. It tends to be a bit transactional, and one of the biggest complaints is that transaction is often, it never even happens. It's gone before the transaction even takes place. Yes. There's not much of a relationship. You're just buying a piece of data that you know nothing else about. So what you're saying is you really kind of get close to the firm. You want to work with them, understand them. Yeah. As you say, bespoke approach.
Bespoke human approach. It's old-fashioned, and it's interesting. We do work with a lot of companies that are very corporate minded, and they've got all of the gimmicks. They've got the breakout rooms, they've got the the strategy meetings and all the rest of it. But sometimes they seem to be a bit bedazzled by the ephemera of the corporate world, and really what they forget is the very basic thing which hasn't changed and probably will never change, is that human beings need to talk to another human being and feel like they've been listened to. Yeah. And that they can talk to someone and trust that person to look after their needs. It's as simple as that.
Right.
So we do that.
Tell us a bit about your team setup. Who have you got, and how does it work?
We've got a small team of people who are highly trained. They tend to be people that work a maximum of about 20 hours a week. We did that deliberately because we know that in a calling out situation, as opposed to a lot of people in this industry who have like a battery hen type approach, intensive farming approach to work, we think that's counterproductive. So instead of having hundreds of people in a big call center in an aircraft hangar dialing out non-stop, we don't do that at all. We've got carefully chosen people who are maybe, you know, there's no typical person, but let's say, for example, a mother of two, middle-aged, she's come from a professional background, but she wants some extra work. She's got a great work ethic, she's conscientious, she's good on the phone, she understands the product, but she's also very thankful that she's also got balance in her life, work-life balance. But when she comes to the job, she's fresh, she's engaging, her productivity is through the roof, and it's consistent. Whereas if you take the other approach, which lots of other telemarketing companies might do, for example, is you just thrash somebody for 40 hours, you get a churn and burn in the employment. It doesn't matter, everyone's a number. But then at the end, you can see that in the quality. And that's why we work with a lot of lead generation companies who outsource their requirements to us, because we're better than them.
Yeah, interesting.
More nimble.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting one. But I think this sort of nurturing bespoke approach that you're talking about is really important, because as I said, the number one topic of conversation in our forums since 2004 has been marketing lead generation. The number two topic has been provider service, or complete lack of it in many cases. So I think what you're saying will be a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. So, you know, if an advisor wanted to work with you, what's the process? How does it work? And what can you do for them?
Well, it's very simple. You can register your interest either by emailing us or you know, getting onto our website and going through the form there. We will contact you. We'll set up a Zoom so you can meet some of the key members of the team who might be working on your account. We'll understand what you are looking to do, and then we will devise a bespoke strategy which addresses exactly your requirements. And then we'll put that in a proposal to you. It may be a combination of a bit of nurture marketing, buying some leads in, it may be one thing or the other, but whatever it will be with no tie-in, with no you know, onerous contracts, and we will be basically on your side. We are independent of the lead generators, so we are able to tell you in all honesty where the best chances of success are based on the data that we see in front of us every day. So we can back that up when we say, listen, you've got a very good chance if you go in this direction, because we know that 50% of those are doing this. These people, currently they've fallen off a little bit. We wouldn't put our money there if we were you, we wouldn't recommend that, but they've got a pro or a con here, whatever. So we can be very, very specific about what we think they should do. Okay. And then we can give it a trial. And our feedback is daily and weekly, whatever they want. There's full transparency. We're always there to be spoken to. They'll never get the experience that you mentioned there, which is where you don't know who to talk to, and it's a transactional approach. It's quite the opposite with us. So the offer that,
sorry, come.
I was going to say the offer we would make would be that if you come on board now and before January, we have got a special offer. It's going to get very busy in January, as usual, always is, and that's when people decide to do things. Of course, the people that decide to do things now will get ahead of the people in January. There are finite leads in the market from a good source, good sources. So I would say, if you want to participate or dip your toe in the water, get in touch as soon as you possibly can now, because we could secure some good sources of leads for you ahead of the rush in January, when everybody will be wanting them, and of course there'll be fewer to go around. And that's not a sales tactic. Well, it is, but it's also, you know, it's genuine fact. That's the way it is. Well,
we'll make sure your contact details are visible for everybody to see. But what would you want the advisor to have thought about before they come on board with you? Because there may be some will go, okay, well, we'll give this a go. We can take a punt. He sounds like a nice enough guy. What would you expect from the advisor to work with you?
I would expect them to have a budget in mind that they're comfortable with, as something that they could speculate with, because although we're doing everything we possibly can to minimize risk and maximize opportunity, there is an element of uncertainty. But I would say come with that in mind. What are you prepared to test the market with? Also, do you have a 12-month view or a 6-month view on what you would like to see as a return? Because I think that's going to be helpful at quantifying whether or not the success is there. if we look at it after 1 week or 2 weeks or 5 days and micromanage and hyper vigilant, we could come up with the wrong impression.
Yeah.
But I just want to know if they've got a longer term view.
Okay, fantastic. Sam, it's been really interesting, really enlightening. And to me, it changes the perception of how businesses like yours, well, should be perceived. I think there is a perception that you pay your money and you get sent some leads, or you might not get sent some leads, and then it's straight on to, well, I'm not going to use them again. What you're suggesting to me is actually it's the complete opposite of that. It's a very much closer, more bespoke relationship where you're working hand in hand with the advisor, because it's in everybody's interests, including the client, to get the right result.
Absolutely, yeah. It's it's a small market really when you think about it. It's significant, but it's small, and everybody knows each other eventually. And so I think the reputation and the long-term success of the relationship is the most important thing for us. We'd rather work with a smallish number of very happy people than sting lots of people and get away with some money and so what? That's not our approach. We're very much in it for the long term, keeping it bespoke, keeping it personal, keeping it small and manageable but high quality.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what everyone wants. Well, thank you so much for that. Really insightful. And very much appreciated. And I hope we'll get another chance to chat as well. But before we go, we'd just like to ask if you've got a book recommendation or an app recommendation, and what have you got for us, Sam, that people ought to be looking at?
Well, a book that I've read and dipped into quite a lot, and I thought would be interesting for a lot of people, because I think it's got lots of applications for day-to-day life and business, is a book by a chap called Rolf Dobelli, and it's sold over 1 million copies already, so there's every chance that people who are listening to this might have already read it. Maybe they've got it on the shelf but haven't read it, I don't know. But it's a great book about cognitive biases, the errors we make in day-to-day thinking, and how to spot them, avoid them, and make better choices. And you can dip into it, and there's lots of things I won't go into it now, but there's lots of things we've already talked about today, which are kind of in this book, the mistakes we make, the misconceptions we come up with, and all sorts of things. It's really interesting, and you could just read a chapter of that or a few pages of that a day, and it's really interesting to dip into. And it's called The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. Okay. And there it is. It's a great book. I recommend that.
Fantastic, thank you for that. That's brilliant. Well, I've got one as well. And it's called Digital Body Language: How to Build Trust and Connection No Matter the Distance. Okay. I think this is relevant in any kind of marketing. In fact, it's relevant to what we're doing right now. I mean, everybody talks about the importance of having great presentation skills, great listening skills if you're working with clients as well. But since the pandemic, and we've all been thrown online into a completely new world, this book is absolutely fantastic. It focuses quite a lot on email, and I think we've all had emails from either clients or a boss or someone else, or might even be a relative, where the emails come in and you look at it and you think, are they angry? Are they cross? Did I upset them? And just the way we are as people, we bash stuff out, we communicate quickly and very easily, but we don't really think about the consequences of how we may be coming across in an email. And this it's a good sized book. It really digs deep. It says, in real life, we lean in, uncross our arms, smile, nod, and make eye contact to show we listen and care. Online reading carefully is the new listening. Writing is the new empathy, and a phone or video call is worth 1,000 emails. Digital Body Language, Erica Dewan, I think that is. Okay. Absolutely fantastic. I think relevant for literally every financial advisor out there. So all it remains is to say thank you very much to you, Sam. We will put your contact details. I just know from seeing the conversations in our forums with financial advisors that what you're doing is very much needed. And I really hope that one or two get in touch with you. You have some conversations with them, and that goes somewhere for your benefit, their benefit, and the benefit of the people who need the expertise provided by financial advisors. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for everybody for watching or for listening. Thank you to my guest, Sam Perry, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks again.
Thank you.